Hello, class. Spring break for University of Hawaii is coming up next week, and I thought I'd go ahead and record this video a week early. So partially because I'm going to the East Coast to visit some family, and I don't know what's going to happen. So I just thought I would have this ready and prepared for you guys. This video is about Karen Wetterhahn, and if you don't know who this is, maybe you've heard the story. She died of dimethyl mercury poisoning. She was an amazing researcher, looked like she was going to do amazing things, and she already did amazing things. Unfortunately, she was working in the laboratory, and she got uh, maybe a few drops of dimethyl mercury on a gloved hand, and that one exposure of dimethyl mercury led to her death a couple months later. And this is a very, very unfortunate thing. And with it, it has changed the way that we look at laboratory safety. There are other examples of this. One of them pops to mind is the radium girls. If you can look into that, we used to have watches that had radioactive radium on it, and because of the beta electrons, you could have your watch and close your eyes. You can still see the hands of the watch going through even through closed eyelids, and people thought it was cool as can be. But of course that would probably freak us out nowadays. But it's because of the radiation. It was the beta electrons coming through was still activating your eyes, the light sensitive parts in your retina. So and so, but back to Karen here. She has a very impressive resume. She was going for great things, and here's a picture of her. And like I said, although she isn't as much remembered in life as she was had an amazing career, and she was a great person, amazing person. But the way that she died, and I'm also saying this as a warning. So like, and we know much more about heavy metal toxicity now, and that was what she was working on, was heavy metal toxicity. But be careful. Like, I personally, and like, people ask me sometimes, I'm a chemist. I'm like, oh, so like you just not be afraid of chemicals. I'm like, I'm the other way around. I'm chemophobic. I personally, I chemicals scare me. They absolutely scare me, and I'm always extremely careful. I have colleagues that have absolutely no fear of chemicals, and like they get excited. Partially, I'm not a synthetic chemist. I'm a physical chemist. So, meaning like I don't make things. At least when I don't do research anymore, but I never ran chemical reactions to make things. I would do some chemistry, like I would mix my laser dyes and that kind of thing, but I was always exceedingly careful. And when I did that, it was a majority of what I did. I dealt with light and equipment and computers was my research. So I wasn't like the Heisenberg and Breaking Bad, where I'm making all sorts of funky compounds. That's not the type of chemist I am. So there's a very, very bunch of different types of chemists, and like I said, I've always been afraid of chemicals, and I've always used lots and lots of personal protective equipment, and watched my technique. And part of this, though, with Karen, when she did this, she followed at the time the proper protocol, and the protocol was to wear rubber gloves, and so she wore latex rubber gloves, and the dimethyl mercury just went right through it and absorbed in her skin, and then started the pathway. That's an interesting day. Something happens, and then, oh, this starts the long path down to the end. So that scares me. That's one of the things that this type of thing scares me. So and so, if you do go into a chemistry career or work with chemicals, be careful. Generally speaking, though, if it makes you feel better, generally speaking, chemists tend to have fewer uh, occupational illnesses. So and people that have occupational illnesses are other professions. Cosmetologists, almost all cosmetologists have contact dermatitis. That's forever inflamed skin. So, I mean, and also, if you ever work in a chemical factory plant, the people that mix the chemicals, so when the people that actually put in chemicals into a vat and they mix together, those people tend to get the occupational illnesses are from long years of exposure. So things like cancer is an occupational illness, and I mentioned contact dermatitis. Due to solvent exposure, you can, besides cancer, you can get various things, insomnia, breathing, respiratory issues. So these are occupational illnesses, the chronic long-term effects of chemistry, chemical exposure. And for me, chemistry, these people are not chemists, but I mean, of course, for me, chemistry is the study of matter and its changes. And if you're working with matter, you're doing chemistry. So but many professions work with dangerous things, and dangerous things happen to these people. So, and here's a plug for being a chemist. I know most of you are not going to be chemists, and that's fine. But like I said, chemists tend to not get occupational illnesses because we have knowledge, we have personal protective equipment, and we have engineering controls. Right. So, I mean, take cosmetology for an example. I mean, if you're working with certain chemicals in cosmetology every day and getting the exposure, like whereas the client gets a tiny exposure over a short window of time. So a client can go into a salon and get a treatment and then go about their lives, come back once every month or two, and the exposure is very limited, whereas a cosmetologist has the exposure 40 hours a week, I don't know, 45 to 50 weeks a year, right? So for decades, that's a difference. And like, you're not going to have treatments in a fume hood in a salon, right? That tends to intimidate clients. Instead of that, you have things out in the open, so there's more exposure. So my point of that is that chemists have engineering controls, whereas many other professions don't have engineering, like a fume hood. A fume hood is an engineering control. So chemists are fortunate in that regards when it comes to chemical exposure. But this is a scary article, and it's extremely well written. It's a very long one, so I know many of my articles that I share with you are short. This is a little bit of a longer one. This is also written by a journalist, so, and it was written last year. I know, but this came. I tend to harvest these articles, right? And when I think they're interesting, and then like when something comes up, like, oh, okay, I'll go ahead and talk about this. But it's an interesting history, and especially with March being looking at the accomplishments of women. It's unfortunate that we lost her so soon, but she was an extremely accomplished person and would probably do more. So sorry for a little bit of a somber one, but this is one of those. Be careful with chemistry, and don't worry. With an online class, you're not going to get exposure to dimethyl mercury. And then a fortunate thing with this as well is that they because of this exposure, we no longer the reason why she was doing this was for NMR, nuclear magnetic resonance. She was using it as to calibrate the NMR, and now they use different compounds that are much more safe than this one, and to calibrate the NMR machines. So if you are out and about, I hope you are well, and with all my emails and messages, I hope this finds you well, and if you're not doing well, if you're not having your basic needs being met, if you're having mental health issues or having academic issues or anything else, any other issue that you're having, please feel free to contact me. I'll do what I can to help you. So I'm going to sign off for now because I've got a meeting in 5 minutes. So aloha.